From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub podcast, Tech Corner. And now, join me in welcoming your host and CISO, James Azar.
Well, folks, welcome to another Tech Corner here on the CyberHub podcast. I'm James Azar, your host. I've got an awesome guest joining me today. This guy's like a legend when it comes to like detecting stuff. So we're going to have a really, really good time. He's the kind of person who, if you see his name, you don't want him on your back. So he's going to share some of the reasons why you don't want to have him on your back. But before we do that, thanks so much for tuning into this week's show. First, comment, subscribe, follow, subscribe, do everything. But most importantly, subscribe. If you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe, turn on the notification bell. That's how you'll know when we are going live every time, posting our incredible content. If you're listening on your favorite podcast listening platform after the fact, one, please make sure to subscribe to the CyberHub podcast. Number two, give us a 5-star review on the platform so that way we know that you love our content. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Know4Wistic and at TiVo Networks. You can see more about them on the show notes, so make sure to check them out. And joining me today, without further ado, the man, the legend, Shai Braitner. Shai, what is happening?
Hi, James. Good to, thanks for having me here. It's been a while since we met, and I'm more than happy to join this show. It sounds like I'm the bad guy, according to your introduction.
No, you're not the bad guy. You're the guy who, when you have a problem and, you need someone to solve it, you're kind of the guy we call. So Shai is the founder and CEO of a company called BICI, BICI. You guys can see that right there on the little boop, right below. There it is, kind of on our ticker below. And tell us a little bit about your background, Shai, and a little bit about how you got into doing what you do today.
Right. So first of all, maybe I think I have a spoiler. I'm not coming from any intelligence or any technological background, but for the last 20 years, I'm dealing with a lot of organizations, with business clients, suppliers, money transactions, banks, employees, partners, and all these kind of disputes. And I think that coming into this industry of cyber, of fraud, of awareness, that's give us a lot of ability to have a wider range of and different overview than most of the maybe technological guys who's dealing in the cyber arena are facing every day, their challenges. And we see it from a different way because we're dealing with different challenges, and I'm sure that we can get into it later on. On my past, I served in an elite unit in Israel, one of the elite units. I served as an officer for 6 years. And I think that something that I can bring from this background is the ability to understand what is the meaning of attack, what is the meaning of abilities, together with understanding the business method. That's what dropped me into the cyber arena and dealing with fraud and solution as we're dealing today at BICI.
So, Shai, I love your background, and I like speaking to people who, it seems like, we have a joke about cyber in Israel, right?
Which?
And everyone was an 8200 and everyone was the commander of 8200, right?
You know what? When you ask someone in Israel, what do you do? He tell you, what do you need? So you're in
right. Yeah, it's fascinating. It's kind of like a running joke. So it's like every cybersecurity company that ever comes out, right, is someone's like, yeah, we were commanders in 8200. I'm like, was 8200 built of commanders? Like, were there no soldiers? Was everyone just the manager title, right? But we know that's not the case. We know sometimes people tend to exaggerate the role just a little bit in order to try to gain some credibility, and that's okay. I'm glad you were able to be like, hey, I was a unit commander. I'm not going to tell you what, but I was an officer for 6 years. I love it. Thank you for being authentic. That's really good. We talk a lot about the idea of you don't always need people who are technically savvy to do cyber stuff. You need people who understand how to think and how to put pieces together. So last year, about a month ago, the FBI released their 2020 cybercrime numbers. And the FBI has a website, for those who don't know. It's called ic3.gov. It's the Internet Crime Reporting Bureau of the FBI. If you've ever fallen victim to a internet cybercrime, you go to IC3 and you report it, and they keep all these statistics. And once a year, they release a generalized report. So for 2020, in reported cyber loss was $4.1 billion loss to U.S. consumers, $4.1 billion. And I think that number is really, really small. A lot of people don't report the fact that they were a victim of crime. But you spoke a little bit about that. What are some of the pitfalls you're seeing from a cybercrime perspective? Because you're not just Israel, you're global. And you're not just the FBI, you're global. You're able to kind of give us a bigger footprint of what you guys see. So tell me a little bit about that.
First of all, I think that we need to remember always that cyber fraud and cybercrime, it hurts everybody. Everybody. And it affects everybody. I saw a few years ago a small sign in a supermarket in the US saying, "Dear valued customer," whatever it was, "we apologize for running out of chicken wings," right? Because our logistical company had a cyber fraud issue. So you come into the supermarket and you face something which is not maybe had a direct impact on you, but in some way it comes to you. So everybody get affected from what's going on around the world today. And I think that following your very specific question about what are the most common pitfalls for organization, I think that the first and most important pitfall is the routine. This is the number one enemy, as far as I can say. The routine, because we can run a lot of training, a lot of awareness programs, whatever it is, if we're not doing it often enough, if we're not dealing with it daily, if we not think about it, if we're not bringing it to our minds, the routine is the number one enemy that will hurt everybody, any organization, because everybody is still sitting and keeping their own day-to-day jobs, and that's what the attackers are looking for. To learn the routine of the organization that they would like to attack, and to find the specific hole. So that's the number one, from my understanding. Number two, maybe I see a lot of organization trying to, I would say, to beat the attackers, meaning trying to be better than the best attacker that they can think of, right? So I'm sitting now in my company, say I can see a lot of fraud and a lot of cyber crimes running around. You say, listen, I have to be better than this one and better than that one, and to give an answer for every kind of attack. And you put a lot of money and a lot of efforts on, I think, places that you cannot, or holes that you cannot fill. And my recommendations to my clients in regards to that is trying to be not better than the attacker, but better than your neighbor. You know, it's like the old classic story about the two guys who are swimming in the ocean, and suddenly they see a shark, and some of them immediately put his fins and start to swim faster. So his friend asked him, "You think you can swim faster than the shark?" He said, "No, I can swim faster than you." And that's the point. If you will be good enough from the average level, most of the attacker will try to look for the weak organization, the weakest organization around them, and to go there. So that would be maybe the second The second issue that's worth to mention, obviously everybody speak about the human factor, the human element, right? So in most cases it comes from there, from the human factor. Everybody speaks about it. Maybe my 2 cents for this issue would be mentioning the what we call the invisible people. Because to see the secretary who sits in the entrance, or the CEO, or anyone from the board of directors, or senior levels, employees, these are people that you can see. The main problem is the invisible people that you can just see and feel around you. It can be the cleaner. It can be someone who comes for a visit. It can be someone who comes to fix whatever it is that you need in the same day, and people actually don't see them. And they come in, they have an access, they can touch the computer in this way or another. They can go to the mainframe, they can go to the panels. So these are the people that we should be sometimes aware to. And I'm not saying that everyone who's getting into our office is the enemy. Maybe someone is cheating him and ask him to do something he don't even understand what he's about to do, he or she. And we need to be very focused on that. That would be my, I think, what was mentioning about the human factor. And of course, I think we need to remember always the difference between what we call the phishing and the spear phishing, right? If we part of a group of people that just, millions of emails or tens of millions of emails running all over, and we just part of it, that would be easy usually. By being targeted very, very specifically, and the attacker on the other side will try to put all his efforts specifically on James or specifically on Shai, and that will change dramatically the chances for them to penetrate.
The number one thing you spoke of, and I think the first point really resonated with me, is routine's a major pitfall. And I think that is oftentimes how, business email compromise takes place, how some of the phishing stuff really ends up being successful. It becomes some sort of a routine. There's been cases in the past where we've seen that routine, and that routine goes directly to the human element of cybercrime, right? People are routine. When we all have a routine in our life, when you and I wake up, I know you, like me, enjoy drinking espressos. So we got to have our little espresso. We take our shower, we get dressed. We have a routine when we get up. We have a routine to start our day. We have a specific routine. Some days where, maybe we do less of something and more of something else, and other days that we do other things. In your investigations and in your career, you've discovered some really complex kind of scams that have gone around. How do smart people fall for that? Why is it that we always see, you and I were talking before the show of a show that I watched where you were interviewed on Israeli TV over what they called the Tokyo Heist, right? The Tokyo scam. Yeah. And those were really smart people that fell for that. How is it, I guess intelligence is kind of like food, right? Just because you think someone's smart doesn't make them smart. But some of these people were very institutional, very savvy people with doctorates and so forth. But how do people continue to fall for some scams that you and I look at and go, how did you not recognize that this was like a scam?
I would say that it will be obvious what I'm going to say, but it goes back to the nature of most of us. And I'm not even saying that I'm not part of it, but we all have a kind of a level of, first of all, laziness. We all trying to do to take away from us, to throw away from us the things that we don't have the passion to deal with, and we don't have the passion to look at, and we don't understand everything about it. It looks for us too complicated, so we're lazy. We said someone else will probably deal with it. I don't need to put too much energy in trying to understand it, and I'm just keep doing what I'm doing every day without thinking outside of the box or how I can do it differently, or to the point with routine, with all the actions that you take, that you mentioned before, right? We wake up in the morning, brush our teeth, get dressed, go to the toilet, whatever we do, right? We do it without thinking. We're doing it without thinking. We don't need to put too much energy in this. That's the point. That's the beauty of it, right? And that's what usually that's what the attacker will usually look at. And I think that's point of being in a lazy position is one of the key elements for this. We trying to build ourselves. We're trying to manage our day in the most comfortable way that we can think of. As simple as that.
So you bring up kind of the idea of the routine of managing our lives. We see these cyber scams that get more and more sophisticated over time, right? I mean, if we look at just the last 5 months, from the sophistication of SolarWinds from a technical perspective, right, to Microsoft Exchange, to some of the more advanced ransomware that have just been something as simple as click here, and people click, and that gives them access to network. Cybercrime and cyber fraud are becoming more and more prevalent. It's a really big man game. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and a lot of organizations just write it off. Right, they write off cybercrime. They go, all right, this year we're going to put a $1 million loss to cybercrime. Right, we're going to write it off. It's a charge off. It's the cost of doing business. Is it sustainable for organization to keep writing off cybercrime rather than really tackling it head on?
Take education, for example, right? You can see the level of education of kids in school. Kind of things, a value that measured all over the world, right? And you see how much money governments contribute to the education system, and you see how not necessarily there's kind of a connection between how much money you put in the education system, right, versus the results of these kids. And you ask yourself why? Because to invest money in some process, it doesn't mean that you did the right thing, even if it's the right budget, if it's a percentage of your income, right? So the key is to put some energy in, to think, to try, and to do it as smart as you can, and relevant as you can, and to be in the highest level of cost effectiveness. So that's the point. And if you just, as an organization, you say, listen, to satisfy my shareholders or myself or my insurance company, I'm taking this amount out of my income and say, listen, I'm investing it in cyber program or in any kind of technological solution, it doesn't mean that you did the right thing. That would be my first comment. And yes, sorry.
No, go ahead.
For example, sometimes adding money to the budget of the cyber awareness, speaking with the people, teaching the people, giving them the attention, make sure that they understand the needs, lectures, kind of a campaigns that can cost, I wouldn't say nothing yet, but it's much less than any new system in the organization, and you buying a new technological software that someone from Israel that say that he was in A200, a commander in A200, just invented now, and spend $1 million on this, maybe it's amazing, but it will never give you what we call the idiot-proof system that we all looking at, because all of us are doing sometimes, mistakes, and even me, pushing on the right on the wrong button. So you just have to be aware, and you just need to know where to focus your attention according to the organization. I think that if you look at it generically, you will be wrong. There is no generic solution. I cannot look on one organization with one system, software, DNA, and use the same method on another organization. And the management should be involved, and not just saying because of the laziness, because we don't understand it. Say, listen, I'm just giving this budget and I did enough. I think that will not stop the problem.
Yeah, so that's a great point that you bring up, is the idea of awareness. And awareness in a lot of organizations, especially large ones, has reached, I don't want to say the point of satisfactory results, but it's reached a point where most people are aware of cybercrime. I think where we're still missing some stuff, and is the idea of how do we take complex technological issues where we require awareness and simplify it for the simple man to understand. So, I like cartoons. I think most people enjoy cartoons. So can you make cartoons of your cyber awareness program and make fun characters and put them into this where people go, because I guarantee you, if I go out and I speak on the street right now with 100 people, most of them would give me a Homer Simpson, South Park, American Dad, or Family Guy example. There's a reason those shows are top of mind. They're fun. The characters are cartoon related, and so they almost are immortal, right? Cartoon characters never really die. The grandpa in The Simpsons has been alive for 30 years, right? And he's been about to die from season number 1. 30 seasons in, the guy is still alive, right? And so it's kind of very, 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 very interesting. I like, as a CISO, I always like to focus on the idea of how do you get the message across to your most talented and skilled people in a way where it doesn't require them to think too much. It just becomes memory, operating memory, kind of like muscle memory.
I think that that's a great example what you just mentioned, because that shows you how you look at the cyber issue, not just as a technological issue, as 90% from the people or the organization looking at.
Right.
You look at it now as the holistic issue that you need to deal with. And for example, right, you can take your marketing department and your PR department, and you have the best people in the organization that understand how to sell something to anyone, right?
Right.
That's what organizations do. I mean, if as an organization you cannot sell your product or your service, you have no reason to exist, right?
Right.
So why not taking the best people that you have in the organization and asking them to build the right campaign internally, right, to the employees in the organization. By the way, it's not just the employees. We have to remember this issue. It's the suppliers, right? It's the subcontractors. It's your clients. It can come from anywhere. And maybe we should give a few examples later on. So you need to build it. You can build it in the organization in any way that will deliver the message and to be sustained, right? Coca-Cola or McDonald's, they're big, they're huge, they sell everywhere, but they're not just having one advertisement once a year, right? They make sure that they're keeping in your brain every time, and they want to make sure that each time you're hungry or each time you're thirsty, you will look for their product. Same here.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the examples that you just brought up. What are some of the most fascinating stuff you've worked on? And what are some of the examples you've kind of mentioned here below?
I think there's maybe just one more issue that it's worth mentioning, even before going to this example, if I may. You know, we always look about on new and creative ideas of how to deal with this issue, with that issue. You know, there's a saying that not just for cyber and for fraud, but generally, generally saying that when things are getting too complicated, we should go back to the manual. And sometimes in many aspects in our life, we forget the manual, and it's already there, and it's already being written, and it's already being used, and we're trying to take things and get them too complicated, right? If I take, James, even two most basic aspect of trying to keep your organization safe would be the two-step authentication, right? Take it as just a simple step. How simple is that?
Right.
To make sure that every login that you do on your computer, on your phone, to every system, to every database, to every email, will require two-step authentication. It costs nothing, and it's very, very simple. Why not doing this? And you know what? In many of the cases that we're dealing with, we see the way that the people get in and penetrate into the organization, or to the email, or to the CRM, or to the phone, is by getting a very simple password, because the employees in the organization didn't even think about having a complexity password, which is so basic. People are still, in the most respected organizations, people are still keep using their date of birth, which everybody knows, the date of their wedding, which they published in the Facebook. So, and that's a very, very basic things that we should be dealing with before going to any more complicated solutions.
So great point there. And for those tuning in and listening, I apologize for the little sound there as Shai was speaking. Our gardening folks decided to show up right now and start using their windblower. So I had to politely text them to cut it out so we can continue our show quiet of all these background sounds. So talk a little bit about some of the more interesting stuff you've worked on. Share a few stories of some of the more interesting investigations you've been a part of, and what have been some of the common denominators with them.
Right. So maybe we should give 2 or 3 examples. The first one, and that I choose, and there's a point about it, is, for example, an Australian company, right? Dealing with infrastructure and the engineering services that works only with cities, with roads companies, right, with governments level. And they're one of, they received, their accounting department received an email from one of their clients, supposed to transfer them the money, right? Asking them to change the accounting, to change the bank account, only the bank account. Now they use, right? They use the same domain, come from the other company, the same domain, only with one difference. Instead of an L in the name, there was an I. Who can even look at it? The stamp on the email and the name was the name of the CEO, and asking them to change the bank account because we're changing our bank accounts. Sounds reasonable?
Extremely.
Right. Right. And the secretary who got this email in the accounting department received this email. She didn't see anything suspicious, and she just in her system changed the bank account, right? Now listen to this. About 6 months later, they needed to transfer the money, right? And they transferred it. It was 1.5 million Aussie dollar. They transfer it automatically to the new bank account that they changed in their system. Their supplier called them, right, the day after, saying, sorry, we haven't received the money. No problem. It takes another 2-3 days. We're checking it again. Now it's the weekend. Australia loves the long weekends. All the holidays are on Mondays. That's fine. We're going to Tuesday. Till someone pay attention to this, I think there's another 2 weeks passed immediately, right? Because we're waiting to receive the money. Maybe it's in the bank, maybe it's here, maybe it's there. Till they understand that they have an issue because the supplier didn't receive the money and you see nothing in his bank account. And our client look at his bank account and see the money left the account. There's an issue. And then they understand that they've been frauded. Now, see how simple it is. And when we think about fraud and cyber fraud, right, and cyber scam,
right,
we always think about phishing and attacking and some extremely developed software that jumped into our computer and took our credentials and here and there. It can be sometimes so simple, and we look at it as a cyber fraud.
Right.
They just open a new domain, change one letter, it looks the same. They received an email from the CEO before, so they have the stamp and everything, which is very easy to get, right? It's a big company. They know who the clients and who the suppliers, because it's public. It's a very big company. They publish their project. And that's it. The money is there. Now, another point that I think worth mentioning to this, as I said before, 6 months before what we call the attack, right? Before something happened, till the money transferred. So we don't always need to look as most of the technological professional people, you know, CISO, and you would the first one to know it, call it the zero-day attack.
Right.
So it's not about the zero-day attack, not always about the zero-day attack. It can take months from the day of the attack till we manage to finish, right, and get the job done from their perspective and take the money out of our victims. So that's, I think, a very basic example, and I hope that it gives some thoughts to some of the people that hear us. I see it as I think it's very important. Another issue is that on one of the biggest fraud that we dealt with, there was 2 competitors, and there was a lot of clients and a lot of projects got stolen from our client. And we understand that there's probably kind of fraud, cyber fraud. And the only way for them to know where are the projects and who are the clients and all their contacts, the only way for them to know it is if they receive the file from our client's servers or computers, right? Anyway, we run into investigation for a few months. You can't believe how it happened. right? One of the people in the organization, gave his tablet, his used tablet. What are you doing with your used tablet? Usually, what are people doing? Finish, working with their tablet or with their smartphone for 2 years,
right,
for 3 years, right? When they say, listen, it's not, I want a new one, it's not working that good. What are you doing with it usually?
You're giving it to someone. You're typically a hand-me-down, giving it to your
kids, the youngest kid. My kid is already in the state that she wanted new, but that's a different story. But you usually give them your used one, right? They give it to the kid, and they didn't change the whole. They didn't delete it to like making it totally new. So there's the factory.
It wasn't restored to original factory settings or had the data erased. Everything was still on there.
Correct. And this is something very basic that people usually forget to do. They have a lot of data on their smartphones, any devices that they hold. It can be a laptop, it can be a computer. It usually happens with smartphone and tablets. And they just pass it on, and all the data is there. And it usually goes to kids. What are kids doing with it? They don't even care about what's happening over there, right? Now they log in to their games, downloading some apps that God knows what's running behind these apps, and your data is there. Everybody has access to it. So that's some basic rule that I would recommend to people to deal with. I think it's very, very important.
So, in some of the stuff, you've kind of shared with me, and I know a little bit of your work because I've been, privy to the work you guys do over at BICI and your personal kind of involvement with the way you guys kind of are able to help organizations and people, deal with some of these challenges. The Tokyo heist to me was very, very interesting, right? The guy who essentially really did work his way through institutional investors on something that never really existed. It was never nothing. You guys investigated it. What was it like to kind of deal with what was a classic fraud with cyber elements? Because I think that's the new sense, right? The idea of building trust through a person and then really using online tools to further develop a story around something that never really exists.
Build trust. That's I think what you mean. Correct me if I'm wrong. So we use all the cyber environment, right, and all the cyber tools that we have in matter to build trust. And how this trust are built, I can have a profile on some on LinkedIn or Facebook, right?
Right.
On any social media. I can build a lot of correspondence on these social medias to show that that I have transactions and I have friends and I have clients or whatever it is, and I have projects running. Build a website. It's obviously that's the oldest trick in the book. Right. But in many times what we see, or even in our profession, when we come in to solve a problem for our clients, because day to day we're dealing with a lot of business dispute,
right?
And you need to get information from someone relating to a business dispute, relating to any litigation process, right? So how we can build the trust for him or her to trust the investigator? It always comes from someone who knows someone who knows someone, right? So James, you and I know each other now, right? And let's assume that someone would like to get information from you.
Right.
It can be used by litigation process, but it can be used also on any cyber attack. So he will come to me after he see this amazing podcast, come to me and said, wow, listen, I have a great presentation to show to James. Please introduce me to James, because you know our relations. And he will come to me and say, listen, I met this guy. He looks very interesting. He looks trustful. I know he's got his presentation. I don't even understand what he's talking about because it's not my, it's not my business. James, you should meet him. Now you came and meet him with my recommendation maybe, or my referral, without even understanding that I don't know him too good. And you're starting to trust him because he came through Shai.
Right.
And that's how it works. Now try to do it online. It's much easier, right? Because now they can be connected, and we know he's this one and she knows that one. And that's how you build this trust. And that's what we need to be very, very careful. Meaning, if someone approaches us, even if it came from someone else that we trust, it doesn't mean that we don't need to stop and ask the relevant question, and to make sure that we actually need to receive something like it, or the approach makes sense. We just need to trust our sense sometimes.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Shai, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing with us today, man. It's great. This Tech Corner is different from a lot of the other ones we do, which are very technology based. And this one, I wanted to bring you guys a more the other side of cyber, as one would argue, kind of the idea of the human element in the investigations that aren't just the forensic and differ stuff, but rather more of the human element side of it, of how humans are manipulated to do bad things without even knowing that they're about to do it. Most people who, fell victim for this stuff weren't doing it because they're malice. They had malice intentions. They fell for a very sophisticated person who was manipulating, like Shai's last example. If I get an email from someone and they're pretending to be Shai, say, hey, James, meet so-and-so, and it's looking like it's coming from Shai, is Shai, and I trust Shai, most likely going to be like, hey, wonderful. And if I don't ever text Shai and be like, hey, thanks for the intro to, Sagi, who's sitting on the side of Shai and you guys can't see, right? Like, I'm going to be, and Shai could answer me and be like, what Sagi? I don't know a Sagi. I don't know who you're talking about. I never made an intro. And I'm like, dude, I got an email from you. And all of a sudden we realize there's a confidence scheme going on to really get a person to act in a specific way.
Totally agree. And it's always good to ask. And the old phrase, better safe than sorry.
Always. Shai, thank you so much for coming. Folks, you can find out more about BICI online and Shai and the stuff that he does. You can connect with him on LinkedIn. You're on LinkedIn, Shai, right?
Correct.
Excellent. Excellent. I'll have his link in the show notes so you guys can connect with Shai. And are they ever going to do that TV show with English subtitles with the Tokyo scheme?
Actually, I think we have a short video. Out of the 45 minutes, we have about, 7 minutes.
Right.
Explain the whole story, including 7 or 8 minutes, including subtitles in English, which I'm more than happy to share.
Yeah.
I'll send it to you as soon as it will be ready. And I'll also upload to our LinkedIn, to BICI's LinkedIn page. So, I think it would be very interesting to hear about it.
Yeah, I think people have to understand how, he took a lot of money, man. A lot of money.
$32 million.
$32 million on nothing.
On nothing. There was nothing there. That's using only his speaking abilities, right? And his charisma just to do that. And we're talking about the most sophisticated investors, right? People that understand how to deal with with money, how to look on
companies, technologies. I mean, he went to people with this groundbreaking technology that's top secret from people who are not experts in the field, but consider themselves to be technology experts. And so very, very fascinating stuff.
And maybe, James, it's maybe worth mentioning that with a very basic research on the web, even if you Google his name, even because he has got a very generic name, but even if you Google the name of the companies and his ID number, etc., you can understand that he's got nothing behind him. And you can see some litigation cases against him, etc. So these are basic, as I said before. When things are too complicated, go to the manual.
Yes, indeed. That is 100% true. Folks, that's it for this week's episode. Make sure to subscribe. Stay tuned. A lot more coming up. Monday, I'll be back live at 9 a.m. Eastern with the Practitioner Brief. We've got an awesome CISO talk coming to you guys also next week. Make sure to go back, tune into the Tech Town Square on Wednesday night and the Other Side of Cyber on Thursday morning. You guys don't want to miss those shows as well. We'll be back with another Tech Corner next week on Friday. Until then, folks, enjoy your weekend. Have a great day and stay cyber safe.
Make sure to subscribe to our podcast and share it with your friends and colleagues. And get all the latest information at cyberhubpodcast.com.